I always get so nervous in front of the camera. Okay, let's try. Hi, I'm Jono, and if you're new here, I do pencil drawings. In this video, I want to teach you how to draw an eye, but like a really, really good one, hopefully. We'll see how it goes. Also, a huge thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Okay, so I'm just going to jump into it. I'm going to start with the tools that I'm using. For this drawing, I'm going to work with charcoal, which I don't usually work with. I usually work in graphite exclusively. I'll use charcoal for like life drawings and studies like that, but for this kind of detailed thing, I've never really tried to work with charcoal, so I'm going to be learning a little bit along the way and probably making a bunch of mistakes. But yeah, hopefully we can all learn together. So anyway, starting off, I'm using just a charcoal pencil. This is medium hardness. I don't really know what that means, but we'll see if it works. I've also got this one here, which is soft, so we'll see the difference between those two. And then some more standard tools. I really love working with cotton wool. I'm not sure how that's going to react with the charcoal. I've got my Tombow Mono Zero eraser, some blending stumps, my kneadable eraser, and also this electrical eraser, which is kind of touch and go. I don't always love them, but sometimes they work really well. So yeah, let's start. So the first thing I'm going to do is just establish where the eye is going to be. I like to try and get a feel for how the nose and the brow will join. Then we're going to try and find the shape of the eye. It's helpful to try and imagine the eye socket. That will help you get an idea for how the eyelids will wrap around the eyeball. From here, it's easier to draw the shape of the eyelids. The top eyelid usually falls into 2 angles or 3 planes, while the bottom eyelid often only has 1 distinct angle or 2 line planes. When you draw the eyelids, try to include the ridge to give the eyelid some thickness. This is an important step which can help your drawing look a lot more realistic. Working in this line stage is so important. It really helps to iron out all the potential mistakes. Once you're happy with your line work, you can then start blocking out your shadows. Here we're just using 2 tones. It can be a bit tricky to try and decide what falls under shadows and what falls under your highlights, especially in the middle tones. Try to be unforgiving here. If it's in any kind of shadow, even just a soft shadow or reflected light, block it out. What you should be left with is this very graphic, design, clean look. In this particular drawing, the brow casts a really nice heavy shadow, so I'm trying to block it all out and also enhance the highlight on the top eyelid. Remember that an eyeball is basically just that, it's a ball, so you'll usually find a shadow on the bottom eyelid just below the ridge. I'm not really sure what I'm doing here. I don't often work in charcoal like this. So I'm trying to smooth out some of my pencil strokes here with cotton wool and end up just making a bit of a mess and not even getting the smooth finish I was hoping for. I realized that charcoal is really difficult to erase. So I knew I wanted to put a highlight in the iris over here. So I tried to erase it earlier on in the drawing, hoping that it would go back to pure white, but that didn't really work out. But that's okay. This whole drawing is a bit of a lesson for me. Okay, now we're going to establish the darkest areas of the drawing. This gives your eye a good gauge of what your range of values will be. The darkest areas will usually be the creases on the top of the eyelid, the pupil, and maybe the area around the tear duct. I've really enjoyed working with charcoal on this drawing. It's quite eye-opening. I don't know why I waited so long before I started experimenting with it again. I'm roughly doing the eyebrow here. I usually really love getting into the little details of the individual eyebrow hairs, but that's super time consuming, so for this drawing I just wanted to kind of suggest or get an idea of where the eyebrow would be. I'm just trying to smooth out my work here, and I'm slowly learning how different charcoal is to graphite. There are probably some charcoal artists out there just cringing at my technique. With graphite, I have to work so hard to get these darks, and with charcoal it's just effortless. But I guess there's pros and cons to each of these mediums. Try to remember that your highlights need to be as bright as possible, so work out where they are and try and give some tone to the area around them, just accentuating them a bit. Okay, so I think I've got a pretty good foundation here, and it's time to jump in and start doing some details. Irises are pretty fun to draw once you have the basics down. There are quite a couple layers to them, so to start off with, the layers closest to the pupil are usually a bit darker. It has this outline as well that's different with each person. Some people actually don't even have it, but I really enjoy drawing it in. It's basically a kind of squiggly circle. I'll try and show you an example of what I'm talking about. The ring around the edge of the iris is another opportunity to get a realistic looking eye. I notice a lot of artists draw a hard line separating the iris from the white of the eye, but usually the cornea creates a bit of a shadow or a blend, so this line isn't actually as hard as people think. It's quite a bit softer, and it makes quite a big difference in my opinion to capture this when you're drawing realistic eyes. Play around with the shapes in the iris, try to study them, and notice how there's often little ovals or diamonds. There's also loads of little fibers weaving in between all the different layers, and inside these diamond-shaped craters, there's like often multiple layers inside them as well that you can kind of have, well, I don't know, like draw little fibers and stuff in between. It depends how deep you want to get into it, but it's really a pretty cool thing to try and draw properly. Hey, I'm just busy editing this video right now, and I realized that I'm not really getting this point across very well trying to describe these fibers, so I'm going to show you a drawing I did a while ago, which hopefully illustrates a little bit better what I'm talking about. Anyway, back to the video. Try to draw your eyelashes with a bit of randomness to them. Obviously they aren't straight, they have this really nice curve to them, and they also overlap each other quite a bit. Eyelashes are a lot thinner, closer to the tear duct, and as you get to kind of the top of the eyelid, they get quite a bit thicker and a bit longer as well. Then when you start getting closer to the outside edge of the eye, a nice little trick is to start blurring those eyelashes if you want to try and get that bokeh shallow depth of field that you get with high aperture camera lenses. The eyelashes on the bottom eyelid are a lot thinner and a bit more sparse than the eyelashes on the top eyelid. They also don't grow in a straight line. There's a bit of randomness to how they come out of the skin, so try to draw them in randomly. I don't know if you can see here, but they're not in a straight line, if you know what I mean. I often find that these eyelashes grow in little clumps of 2 or 3 and then stick together. So if you can, try and remember this when you're rendering eyelashes and draw them in this kind of natural looking way. Okay, and then I just decided to go back into my shadows and really try and get that contrast to pop. But I don't really know what I'm doing here. I attacked it with cotton wool and just destroyed this area. I'm going back into the iris with my Tombow Mono Zero eraser, just to try and get some of those little fibers I was talking about. I'm also using this to add some of the finer hairs that are catching a bit of light. This is actually a pretty important tip as well. The ends of eyelashes usually catch some light and appear white rather than black. So if you can, try to pay attention to this and include it in your drawing. There's this great little highlight that sits between the bottom of the eyelid and the eyeball. It's such an easy little thing to draw, and it just gives so much life to your drawing. So try and look out for it and don't miss this opportunity to draw it. Okay, so if you have the patience, try to observe the eyelashes being reflected in the eye. Usually they'll be most visible in the highlights of the eye, but they also fade into the whites of the eye. At this point, the drawing is mostly finished. I'm just going to add some texture in the skin around the eye, which also ended up failing. But this is what I love about drawing eyes. There are so many different textures to explore and to practice. They really are a wonderfully challenging subject to practice with. Just a quick shout out to this video's sponsor, Squarespace. I really appreciate their support. They've really helped me out in a huge way to help build this channel and sustain it. But also I'm really happy to recommend them to you guys because I really think that they can help artists and creatives with their careers. I used them when I first started out, and I still use them today. It's so important to create an online portfolio to help clients find you, and to have a platform to make it easy for them to get in touch with you. And I just felt that Squarespace did that effortlessly. I never had to patch or upgrade anything. I could register a domain with them or set up an online store. And most importantly, I could design a portfolio and show my work the way that I wanted to. Also, every time I got stuck, their amazing support team helped me out instantly. So if you're looking at building a website, give Squarespace a try. And if you decide that you love them, use the soft code and get 10% off your first purchase. And there we go. I hope you found this video helpful. If you're just starting out, let me know if maybe I went too fast or if you could actually follow along. and what you'd like me to do in the next one. I think it would be cool to maybe do a couple of these, maybe like noses and mouths or figures or something like that. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you'd like to see next. Leave a like if you found it helpful. It really helps the channel out in a massive way. As always, thanks for the support, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.